a lot of pen testers are reactive most of the time, but that kind of pushed them to say, let's be more proactive with this so we can catch this, so it doesn't go to the incident response team within a day. So yeah, a lot of that did change, and then just kind of coordinating and finding a way to improvements in remediation as well.
Welcome to Blue Team Diaries, the podcast that celebrates and honors the professionals who work tirelessly to defend their organizations and those who build tools to support defenders. In each episode, host Peter Manev invites his guests to share their stories and experiences in a fun and lighthearted conversation. Blue Team Diaries is sponsored by Stamus Networks, a global provider of network-based threat detection and response solutions. Learn more at stamus-networks.com.
Hi and welcome to the Blue Team Diaries. I'm Peter Manev, and today my guest is Jeremy MountainJohnson. Jeremy is working as a security analyst in the public sector. Formerly, he has worked at US Bank in digital forensics and incident response, digital forensics in the public sector, e-discovery with Kroll, and was an adjunct professor at Metropolitan State University teaching UNIX. Jeremy has and continues to serve on the board of the Minnesota chapter of the High Technology Crime Investigation Association, coordinating training events and speaking engagements. Furthermore, he also contributes to and helps others out in the open source communities like Suricata and Linux. Jeremy MountainJohnson, it's a pleasure to have you. I'd like to ask a cool question right off the start, at least so I think. And if possible, we appreciate much of any info you could share. Can you share with us a cool project you have been working on recently?
Well, this is actually one. Well, I not to be too vague here, but something that I'm constantly working on when I have time in the background is really increasing efficiency and automation with incident response and security response as well. As I work with more and more products, when you get into NDR, EDR, etc., it's always a fun challenge for me to be able to how can we automate this tool and make the response more efficient. That includes notification, but that also includes the actual response itself. A lot of times, this has been the story of the field is alert fatigue and trying to find ways to basically leverage technology and computers to actually do some of that work for us so we don't get overwhelmed with alerts. I guess specifically, you take any IDS system, for example, being able to ingest that. I'm a Python person. I also use PowerShell and a few other languages, but being able to work with some of these cloud-based solutions and on-prem solutions to respond to incidents and help make our jobs easier is what I consider fun, and it's something that I like working on, and will probably continue. It'll always be there, I'm sure, because as things evolve, you've got machine learning now, and it's only going to continue to expand. So
awesome. So actually, out of curiosity, a follow-up question. I have a few of these, so I hope you don't mind.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
All right. So when you say a fun project, so how fun is it? And I'm just asking out of curiosity, to be very honest. You have a lot of EDR, NDR, XDR vendors, and products, and all those similar things. And really, actually, one big challenge has been the automation. There's been a lot of actually projects and vendors working towards that goal, trying to make it easier to automate and all that stuff. Because you actually need to, in my view, you need to gather a few things from a few different vendors or a few different points, information points, let's speak, to create a picture that will probably give you enough information to decide what the next course of action will be. So out of your experience, out of curiosity, How easy do you find that to be nowadays? You know what I mean? Like with different vendors, different tools. Is it easy? Is it easier? Is it actually hard and difficult to put all those things together to make it useful and all those sorts of things, out of curiosity?
100% it's been easier.
Okay.
I think about, I was working with antivirus, like, I don't know, over 12 years ago, and kind of tying everything together. I remember working on it. They had, eventually they released an API to interface with the I tried to say this without kind of calling them out directly, but the enterprise solution they had was very walled off. It was like, here's what you get, you use our product, that's it. But I wanted to tie it into things like, and they even had an IDS product too, but just to be able to tie that stuff in together, so you enrich the data that you're looking at when you're responding. And back then it was a lot harder. I don't think there's, now there's so many standards with APIs and even SDKs. Just being able to, having an API shipped out the door with a cloud solution is great for me, because then we can pull it on-prem and we can tie it into our internal systems, as well as other cloud solutions. And I think with the unification of API and the openness of a lot of even the enterprise tools, even the big expensive ones, they're seeing that, hey, people want this. They want to be able to use our tool for sure, but also pull in other unique tools they may want to use with our tool, and that's been great. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of EDR stuff is turned that direction now, where it's like they realize they're giving you a ton of data, but just being able to manipulate that, report on it, and act on it is so much easier with these built-up APIs that have significantly improved in the last 5-10 years.
Excellent. Got you. And so I'm guessing is when you're choosing a solution, a tool, or a vendor, for example, and things like that, I'm guessing, is that the case though? You always have that in the back of your mind, how easy it is to automate stuff or data gathering from that tool, make it work for you, or that's not like a main point.
I know. Well, if I'm involved, it is a main point, because that's it. But I mean, with this field, and this too. I mean, I've worked in various roles, in incident response, security analyst, digital forensics, all the above. But what I found is, especially when you're new, you come into an environment, and sometimes it's like, this is what we're doing, and this is what works, and this is what we're going to use, and you have to be able to adapt to that. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, if I have a voice, if you're doing an RFP and wanting to bring in a new vendor, or whether it's because we're changing or we're bringing in a totally new platform and framework, just being able to kind of nudge early on in the process. Hey, what does your API look like? And what SIMs do you plug into easily? Because anything can be plugged into a SIM, but it's all.
Then you have to do more, of course.
Yeah, it could be more heavy lifting than that. It could just be weird XML or something. So.
Right. There's always, I usually sometimes have to say, there's always something left over to automate. You know what I mean? You can never be, can never be complete. Yeah. But out of curiosity, if you could share like a or a close call moment with us, which there was like a big incident, or you nearly got breached, but your team managed to avoid disaster. If you could share.
Sure.
Any story would be awesome, if that's okay.
Yeah. This is going back a ways, and kind of the Wild West, as I like to think of it, back in Fortune 100 enterprise environment. And it's interesting because they most large organizations always have a big IT team, big security team, and even still stuff can fall through the cracks. And so it just takes, one person to see it, and, you run with it. As I say, you've got multiple teams and silos, when you're setting up servers. And typically for the security team, we're not typically involved until later on in the process, or even at all, because for the most part, it's supposed to be vetted, and they have their policies to follow when they're standing something up. But yeah, basically what happened was something was stood up and was compromised relatively quickly, but the turnaround time
Oh wow, okay.
was was very quick, which is huge because obviously most breaches, it's 6 months to 2 years before anybody finds it, but just I just happened to kind of be keeping from a distance, kind of watching things, and I like to whenever something falls into my realm and my team's realm from a security team perspective, it's always like you kind of want to know what we're getting into, and
Right.
it paid off to do a little bit of extra work. I mean, I didn't have to be too involved, but it's like this isn't right. We need to shut this down and remediate this before we even go further. And that's something too. I know on the one of the other chats you had too, they were saying that you really have to be able to talk to the executives, talk to sysadmins, and say, "Here's why I'm making this decision, and you need to listen to me. Here's why." And most of the time, if you're able to articulate it in terms they can understand, they will say, "Okay, well, obviously we need to shut this down now and mitigate the problem before it becomes much worse." So that, yeah, that's something that yeah, it's kind of the big picture with this specific incident. But yeah, being able to see that traffic flying and know right away was kind of a huge. But it was, yeah, there's always that sinking feeling.
Right.
It's like, is this really happening? So,
Yeah, this is not happening. Not now.
yeah. So,
But from that perspective, I hope it didn't keep you up too late that night anyway, or that day. Wasn't too long. But what you mentioned is like basically it has a lot to do also with communications internally between different teams
Yep.
and so on and so forth, as usual. But from that perspective, did it actually, from the perspective of this incident happening, did it actually have any consequences in the organization, both in terms of process procedures or communication or similar?
Yeah, it definitely increased well, it's kind of a gap there because it's like, well, again, big organizations have multiple, even within security, there's multiple teams, but just to have
Right.
yeah, it led to the change of being more proactive about making sure that a lot of pen testers are reactive most of the time, but that kind of pushed them to say, let's be more proactive with this so we can catch this, so it doesn't go to the incident response team within a day. So
Right.
so yeah, a lot of that did change, and then just kind of coordinating and finding a way to improvements in remediation as well, because it's like, well, who deals with this? And it's like, well, you've got pen testers, you've got incident response, and it's like, okay, somebody needs to take ownership and actually run with this. And so yeah, a lot of different areas saw significant additions and improvements to their policies and procedures, so to eliminate that gap, so it doesn't happen again, or at least, as we know, breaches can't be 100% avoided, but at least minimize the risk as much as we can.
Right.
So
that's an interesting point, actually. I think I mean, I agree with it 100%. Minimize the risk, because that ultimately minimizes the exposure and potential breach, of course. But if you could go back in time, let's say turn back in time, and is there anything you would have done differently, or in terms of that specific incident, or you think the only things we could have done differently was after the incident, after there was some analysis done and similar things?
yeah, I mean, it gets tricky. I mean, hindsight is 2020, but I mean, there isn't a lot of things differently. As an incident responder, that was already going above and beyond of what I was expected to do.
Right.
but at the same time too, I've got my core roles and my core job that I'm supposed to do, and yes, I'm flexible, as is with this incident, but at the same time too, again, because of the gap that needed to be fixed, I don't think there's a whole lot I would have done differently, just because it was the situation that we dealt with, and I'm a fan of, like I said, automation and being proactive, but at the same time too, like you have to be reasonable too. Like, I mean, if I were to start getting my fingers, like, okay, I'm working with the server team and I'm like holding their hand, it's like that's not really appropriate as an incident responder.
Right, don't go from one extreme to the other and things like
and
that. Yeah.
And two, I mean, working in the past when I've worked in large enterprise environments, I had to pick my battles too. And obviously you wanted to be careful because if you start doing the bull in the china shop for everything, people aren't going to listen to you, and they're not going to want to work with you, because it's important to have those communication skills to work among other teams. And there's a time and a place to say whether it's shut down this box or, hey, this isn't a problem yet and it needs to be fixed. I mean, yeah, it's about picking your battles, really. So.
Right. So if I got you correctly, it's big influencers, so like communication, rallying the team around the idea or what the problem is and things like that, and basically establishing that communication channels between the teams and the reason why somebody wants this or that or the other. But do you think it's equally important to have as well, besides that, do you think it's equally important also, like tools, in terms of tools, or what is your go-to tool that you use every day and could not live without, let's say, with or without incident response? Do you think that also has a big role in it, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're all different and we all have different tools.
Because you did mention automation on your level, that's all. I'm
Yes,
assuming that's a lot of tools there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like I tend to be heavy with Python, but kind of like, for other people I've worked with, I've always been kind of known as the regex grep guy. So that, I mean, that's ultimately been my favorite tool. I mean, even when I was doing just forensics way back in the day, it was the go-to tool when you're looking at searching for strings in a large set of data, and that's exponentially increased too. but yeah, it just and why I like it so much is it puts me in control. And I know what it's doing, and even in incident response, especially in forensics, sometimes, vendors will try to say, well, we're the push button solution. We can handle everything for you. And that's just not terribly realistic in my opinion. You need the responder or the examiner to actually, add context and know what's going on. And for
to
me,
be enabled, so to speak.
Yes, yeah. For me, grep kind of checks a lot of boxes because it's like I can, I know what I'm doing. I can test I can test my queries. I can, and it's and just kind of knowing how it's working, to the near bit level is nice, for me. But yeah, I mean, I would say too, I know somebody you talked to before mentioned Wireshark, and yeah, that's definitely one of the, I mean, that's the tool I've been using for years. I mean, it's since.
I appreciate that a lot because, like, I don't hear very often somebody say, knowing grep to the bit level. That's pretty impressive, and I do appreciate it because you don't hear it very often, to be very honest. So
yeah, so yeah, well, yeah, whether or not, well, I say with incident response in my professional life, yeah, that controlling stuff doesn't go out of here. It's mostly in this field, and that's what. Again, that's what kind of brings me comfort is knowing that how the tool works, and knowing that it's reliable and it's, I can duplicate my results, is huge. So.
All right. Do you think the tool is as important as the person using it?
Yes. Well, in order to use, yeah, I would say in order to use the tool, I mean, you have to know what you're doing. So,
Right.
again, too, when you look at, you can use T-Shark, but yeah, if you're using Wireshark, I mean, I feel like that's a good tool for some people, especially when you're starting out, because it's like it gives you a nice layout. You don't have to learn nearly as much as what you do with grep in the command line. So yeah, I mean, you really have to know what you're working with, obviously, to make if one's not effective, they're both not effective, really.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good way to putting it. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yep,
Yep.
yep. That's an awesome way of putting it. Yes, absolutely. Um, all right. So you've got many tools. You have different people. You have to have communication in order. You have to have different teams talking to each other and understanding what the problems are back and forth. Um, you need to be able to use and understand different tools. There's many different malware actors out there, and so on and so forth. And all that keeps evolving and evolving. There's more technology, there's more risks, there's more exposure, and so on and so forth. So it seems that it's a very, how do you say that, very rich kind of volatile environment as well at the same time. If you had one piece of advice to give to someone thinking about becoming a cyber defender, what would it be? That one thing that you'll say, consider this or do this. What would that be, out of curiosity?
Well, yeah, I used to be an adjunct professor at State College around here, and that's one thing. I'd have students in my class, and they were going into programming, forensics, or cybersecurity, and it's really true for all three. Is that um, let your passion out. If this is something you're really passionate about, let it out, because a lot of the work requires a lot of passion. And a lot of people say this too, is that there's some people that want to get into it because they think, oh, I'm going to catch bad guys, and that's fun. And it is, but it's not an episode of CSI. It doesn't look like that at all. But if it's something that you're passionate about, bring that to the table. No matter where you are, if you're a student, bring it to the table. If you've got your degree and you're starting to look for entry level jobs, bring that to the table, because that's something that people that are hiring are watching out for. They want to see somebody who's really passionate about it, not just wanting to do it for the paycheck or for what they perceive to be fun. So, don't get me wrong, it is fun at times, as we discussed previously. The automation piece to me is fun. It's fun and rewarding. It is. But at the same time, it's not like that 100% of the time. There's going to be busy times and
Right, sure. The
stressful
road to
times.
get there is not as in often enough. It might not be as fun, but
Yep.
it's rewarding for it. I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, I was just gonna
What?
say. Oh, one little extra to that too is, yeah.
Please.
Thinking back to when I was teaching, is that when there's a group of whether it's students or even coworkers that you're working with that are interested in this, bring it up to them. Make the time for that too. Because yeah, I kind of oversaw some of the clubs, and it was interesting to see who would actually show up. And most of the time, it was the ones that had the passion. The ones that didn't, or they might have other stuff going on in life, or they're just not as driven. And you need to be driven
Right,
to do this work. So
right, right. And in those line of thought, so like, if I may, a personal question, if that's all right, of course.
sure.
What motivates you to work in this field? What made you choose cybersecurity? It's not an easy field. There's always um, something new. There's always some even suggesting that usually the malicious actors have the edge, and have had the edge for a while. So what made you choose cybersecurity? What's the motivation?
Okay. Well, it is kind of a long story, but I'll try to summarize it as
Oh,
best I can.
I'm in for it. Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
no
All right.
problem.
Well, a lot of it, a lot of it started actually when I was probably about 4 years old. I had a just curiosity, um, and that got me curious about electronics when I was a kid. Even before I should have been playing with electronics, I was, and I'm still around to talk about it, so that's good. So, I think there might have been some incidents with a fork and an outlet socket, but you know. But yeah, there was this. My mind wanted to know how things worked, and kind of fast forwarding to a bit. When I was in college, I was not sure what I thought about business management. I was working as a park ranger, and that's was like, well, I might want to do this. But I always kept coming back to just the problem solving of it all, and just being able to figure out and solve problems, and make my job easier, my team's job easier, my company's job easier. And just knowing that I'm doing a good job. I have a very strong work ethic, so it's just there's like I said, that drive there to really do it. And I remember what got me into digital forensics at first was I was reading the paper. It was probably 20, 30 some years ago, but reading the paper, and I read about a case involving encryption on a PGP encryption on a Windows desktop, and they basically said, yeah, there's nothing we can do. And it's like, and in my head, I'm just thinking, like, did they try this? Did they do this? Did they create an index of possible, so it really clicked. And then a school in the area was doing a digital forensics program, and so I jumped in. Yeah, I was working full time still outside most of the time, and then I jumped in. And I loved it, and started doing that. Was doing forensics for the public sector, very rewarding. And then I got picked up by a large company, and I was doing forensics for them, and then that turned into incident response. I mean, I feel like they're kind of running parallel with each other. There's a lot of similarities in how you handle them too. I mean, I use grep in both areas, especially in forensics too. But I was like, hey, I like this too. This is fun. I still get that reward in my head when I'm doing an IR case, just like I do a forensics case. And that's what really, I mean, yeah, as soon as I kind of went back to school for the next degree, I was like, this is where I want to be, and it's something that I've really like I said, it's something that I'm still very passionate about. So
awesome to hear. So it was actually basically your passion towards that was developed based on a certain fact that you're always curious about.
I mean, it's basically the engineering brain, and then too, I mean, a lot of what circles, especially in forensics, but also in IR, is that. And I hope everyone listening takes this advice to heart, but I'm very good at thinking about what the bad guys do, and that's really helped me, and that's helped kind of figure out how to respond to an incident, how to conceptualize a case in digital forensics, is being able to kind of put in their shoes, like, okay, if I was going to do this, what would I do? And how would I do it to evade detection? And that's what really kind of, again, that flows into curiosity, where it's like, well, okay, what did they do to evade detection? Like recently, for example, we're seeing a lot of encoded JavaScript and HTML attachments. And just looking at that and like, okay, here's the key, and here's how they obfuscated it, and that stuff's fascinating too. But yeah, everyone listening on the call, make sure you use your curiosity and your powers for good.
And how things are working, basically, to figure out.
Yeah, we don't need any more bad guys. So, and we need all the help you can get on the good team. So. So,
Definitely agree. I have this kind of, I don't know, at least something that I always believed in, or a concept, let's say, in terms of defending, and it's like one of the advantages. There's many advantages, disadvantages with everything, attackers, defenders, and all those things. But one of the advantages that defenders have is they have probably a much better, not probably, most likely a much better understanding of the area or the network or the organization they're defending than, let's say, an attacker. Attacker needs to figure out all these things, or at least understand what they can and cannot do, and things like that. What do you think about that? Do you think that's an advantage or disadvantage nowadays, with everything going more complex, more versatile, and all those things? Like nowadays, you have everything and anything: apps, clouds, local, remote work, things like that. It's really very flexible. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, and I don't think it's much of an advantage. For example, too, I mean, when cloud stuff was coming out, some of the places I worked for were like, yeah, everything in the cloud, take my money, which is great because, again, you don't have to pay a large internal team. It's this other group. But then as a security person, I would see this a lot where it's like, okay, you went with X cloud company or whatever. You're using Google or Amazon or whatever on the back end, or Oracle maybe. And, they just, the business need and the development need is to push it out there and get it to work. The problem is that, as a security person who's curious too, like for me, it's like I'd look at it and like, okay, why is there a database just hanging out over here that's not secure? Like, we can't do this. So let's not sit and wait for something to happen. Let's get this secured, and then you're working with changing policies on RFPs and on the business end, making sure that if there is an incident on your cloud for our service that we're paying for, does the security team get to work with you? Do you have a security team? What's in place? What are our options? Because I mean, realistically, like you said, things are getting complex. People have all the time in the world to do recon. so there's not really much of an advantage. And the thing is, people aren't really I mean, because information security is so I still think there's a shortage of people in both sectors, private and public. And
I agree.
You don't have time to chase down every potential recon that's happening, and there's so much data. That's not to say don't do that, but you can't focus all your time on that, because you're going to be responding to incidents. You're going to be, you might work on doing some proactive tuning of IPS. And some of the next generation firewall stuff, but yeah, I think there's a little bit of a notch up when the environment too. But yeah, I mean the pen tester in me is just like, well, I got all day to recon on you.
Sure. Well, in that line of thought as well, because it's natural, it's normal. Everything is complex. Everything changes. Everything adjusts. It's a dynamic world, right? It's IT. It's the lifestyle we live in. Everything's on the network, connected, and so on and so forth. Do you think, or actually rather, what is there that you think that could be stopping people from pursuing a career in cybersecurity? Do you think there is something like that, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting community. I think there are a lot of when you get into gender specific stuff, where I could see certain groups of people, whether it be by gender, race, or whatever, thinking that, hey, maybe this isn't for me because maybe they work for an organization that has an IT team and they're not quite as inclusive, and for various reasons, whether it's their own decision or because they haven't been able to find a diverse workforce. And I could see that being a barrier for many groups, just because kind of on the outside looking in, it's like, well, I'm another white male, so it's like, I mean, not to talk bad about myself, but I feel like that's thinking outside of the box. I could see like, hey, you don't look like me, you might not come from the same background as me, and maybe this isn't the field for me. But I don't think that's something that, again, it doesn't matter who you are. If you have that passion and drive, just bring it in and keep going.
Excellent. And well, final question. Would you like to give a shout out to anybody, any mentors that helped you out?
I mean, there's a lot of coworkers and former classmates going back way in the day too. I'm just going to use his first name, but I'm going to say Nate, and he'll know who I'm talking about if he hears it. Well, I'm sure he will hear this at some point, but it's a coworker of mine that I've worked for years. We started out in forensics together, and we basically fed on each other a lot too. And I will say too, when I was teaching, a lot of my students too, I mean, that was a two-way street. Obviously I'm instructing them, but a lot of the side conversations we had in class was like, hey, I didn't know that. So just being able to, I'm the mentor, but it's a two-way relationship with mentorships. I mean, nobody can know everything, but being able to share what you do know with others, and then they in turn share knowledge that you don't know is a good thing. So I mean, really too, it's
that's an awesome point, and thank you very much for making it, because it also speaks a lot to me. You never, in our industry, I think, at least from my limited experience, maybe there's always something new. There's always somebody to show you something new. There's always ways to learn new stuff. It doesn't really matter how many years you've been in the industry or not. So it's really fascinating. And I would like to thank all those people that you gave a shout out to, because otherwise it would have made it much harder for us to meet you, Jeremy, and to be on the podcast as well. I'd like to thank them as well.
Yeah.
And Jeremy MountainJohnson, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for being here. And of course, as any defender, you're an inspiration. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me, Peter.
Thank you for celebrating and honoring the defenders with Blue Team Diaries. You can find this and all our previous episodes on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you're interested in learning more about our sponsor, Stamus Networks, please visit stamus-networks.com.